When an arrogant hotel manager refuses service to an elderly black woman, he thinks he's protecting the hotel's prestige. But what he doesn't realize is that she's not just another guest. She's the secret powerhouse behind the entire building. The next day, she returns, not for a room, but for revenge. With the power to decide his fate. Will he be fired, or will he learn the lesson of a lifetime? Watch as karma unfolds in the most unexpected way. The grand lobby of the Hôtel Étoile in Paris shimmered with opulence. Marble floors polished to a mirror sheen, chandeliers dripping with crystal, and a faint scent of lavender wafting from discreet diffusers. At 42, Julien Moreau managed it all with a meticulous eye and a firm hand. A native Parisian with a clipped mustache and a tailored suit, he prided himself on upholding the Étoile's reputation as a haven for the elite. Old money, new money, anyone who fit the unspoken mold. To Julien, that mold didn't include people like the woman who walked through the doors on a crisp October evening. She was older, maybe 70, her dark skin contrasting sharply with the white fur stole draped over her shoulders. Her gray hair was swept into an elegant bun, and she moved with a quiet dignity, pulling a sleek suitcase behind her. Julien watched from the front desk, his lips tightening. She didn't belong here, not among the Étoile's clientele of aristocrats and CEOs. He'd seen her type before, people who wandered in, expecting luxury they couldn't afford, only to waste his time. "Bonsoir, madame," he said, stepping forward before she reached the desk. His tone was polite but cold. "May I assist you?" She stopped, her eyes meeting his, sharp, unflinching. "Good evening. I have a reservation. Margaret Ellis." Julien didn't move to check the system. He didn't need to. "I'm afraid there's been a mix-up," he said smoothly. "We're fully booked tonight. Perhaps I can recommend another hotel nearby, something more suitable." Margaret tilted her head, her expression unreadable. "Suitable? I booked a suite 3 weeks ago. Check your records." He forced a thin smile. "No need. I know our guest list. We've had a last-minute VIP arrival. Your room's been reassigned. I'm sorry for the inconvenience." It was a lie, one he'd used before. The Étoile had empty suites. He always kept a few in reserve, but he didn't want her here, tainting the ambiance. A few guests in the lobby glanced over, their whispers prickling his neck. He straightened, gesturing toward the door. "If you'll follow me, I'll arrange a taxi." Margaret didn't budge. "I'm not leaving," she said, her voice low but firm. "I paid for that room. You're refusing me service?" "I'm protecting our standards," he snapped, his patience thinning. "This is a private establishment. We reserve the right to refuse anyone." Her lips pressed into a line, but she didn't argue. Instead, she pulled out her phone, tapped it once, and said, "Fine, have it your way." Then she turned and walked out, her suitcase rolling silently behind her. Julien exhaled, brushing off the encounter. Another problem solved. He returned to the desk, nodding to a waiting couple, white, well-dressed, the kind of guests he welcomed. The night rolled on, uneventful, until his phone buzzed at 2 a.m. It was Claude Dupont, the Étoile's owner and Julien's boss for 15 years. "Julien." Claude's voice crackled, unusually tense. "What the hell did you do?" "Sir?" Julien sat up in his office chair, blinking away sleep. "Margaret Ellis. She just called me, said you kicked her out." Julien frowned. "She didn't belong here, Claude. I handled it. We've got standards." "Standards?" Claude barked. "She's my oldest friend. owns half the real estate in London and New York. And as of an hour ago, she owns the Étoile. She bought it from me, cash, overnight. You're lucky she didn't fire you on the spot. Julien's stomach dropped. What? She's coming back tomorrow. Fix this, Julien, or you're done. The line went dead. The next morning, Julien stood in the lobby, palms sweating, as Margaret Ellis returned. She wore a navy suit now, her stole replaced by a silk scarf, and she carried herself like she owned the place, which, he realized with a jolt, she did. Guests parted for her, sensing something had shifted. Julien forced his feet forward, his throat dry. "Ms. Ellis," he began, bowing slightly. "I apologize for last night. It was a misunderstanding." "Save it," she cut in, her voice like steel. "You didn't misunderstand. You assumed. Because of how I look, you decided I didn't belong. That's not a mistake. It's a choice." He flinched, her words slicing through his polished facade. I didn't know who you were." "That's the point," she said, stepping closer. "You shouldn't have to know. I could have been anyone. A teacher, a nurse, a nobody. You had no right to treat me like less." Julien's face burned. He braced for the axe, fired, disgraced, his career torched. Instead, Margaret handed him a folder. "Open it." He did, hands trembling. Inside was a contract. His job, extended, but with conditions. Training, oversight, a probation period. "You're not firing me?" "Not yet," she said. "Claude vouched for you, said you're good at what you do when you're not being an ass. I'm giving you a chance to prove it. But you'll earn it. Start by shadowing me today." He nodded, too stunned to argue. She didn't wait for more. Striding toward the manager's office. Her office now. Julien followed, his world tilting. Margaret didn't waste time. By noon, she'd called a staff meeting, her presence commanding the room. "This hotel's changing," she announced. "No more gatekeeping, no more cliques. Everyone's welcome. Every race, every class. If you can't handle that, leave." Julien stood at her side, silent, as murmurs rippled through the staff. She turned to him. "You're leading the first step. Audit our policies. Find every rule that's vague enough to let bias creep in. Rewrite them, tomorrow." It was a test. He spent the night poring over manuals, his pride warring with a growing unease. He'd written some of those rules, flexible phrasing about guest suitability he'd used to keep out people like her. By morning, he handed her a revised draft, his handwriting shaky. She read it, nodded. "Better. Now enforce it." Days turned into weeks. Margaret mentored him, ruthlessly at first, pointing out every slip, every assumption he didn't even know he made. She brought in trainers, psychologists, activists, who dissected prejudice like a science. Julien squirmed through it, but he listened. One session, a facilitator asked, "Who've you turned away that you don't remember?" He couldn't answer. The faces blurred. Too many. Then there was the reflection. Late nights, alone, he replayed that first encounter with Margaret. He'd seen her skin, her age, and stopped there. Why? His parents had been proper Parisians, polite but distant with outsiders. His friends cracked jokes he'd laughed at. He'd never questioned it, until now. The mirror was brutal, but he kept looking. 3 months in, the Étoile felt different. Julien stopped hovering at the door, sizing up guests. He trained the staff himself, firing 2 who wouldn't adapt. A black family from Chicago checked in, laughing, loud, ordinary, and he welcomed them without hesitation. A refugee couple, nervous and underdressed, got a sweet upgrade on his dime. Margaret noticed, said nothing, but her silence felt like approval. One evening, she called him to her office. "You're off probation," she said, sliding his contract back, signed. "You've changed, Julien. Not perfect, but better." He exhaled, relief flooding him. "Why'd you give me the chance? Most would have sacked me." "Because I've been where you are," she said. "Not the bigotry, though I've faced plenty, but the ignorance. I built my empire assuming I had to be ruthless, exclusive. A friend showed me otherwise. I paid it forward." He nodded, the weight of her trust settling in. "What now?" "Keep going," she said. "This place isn't mine to run forever. I've got other battles. It's yours if you don't screw it up." 6 months later, the Étoile thrived, not as a playground for the rich, but as a beacon. Word spread. Paris's grandest hotel welcomed all. A single mom from Senegal threw her daughter's birthday party in the ballroom. A queer couple from Berlin honeymooned in the penthouse. Julien greeted them, his mustache less severe, his smile genuine. Revenue held steady. Different guests, same money. And the staff mirrored the city's diversity. One morning, as he adjusted a vase in the lobby, Margaret stopped by, her suitcase packed. "I'm heading to London," she said. "You're on your own." He straightened. "I won't let you down." "You'd better not," she replied, a rare grin breaking through. "I'll be watching." She left and Julien turned back to the lobby, now alive with voices. French, English, Arabic, laughter. He wasn't the same man. Not fully redeemed, not flawless. Old habits lingered, whispering in quiet moments. Could he keep this up? Could he take it beyond these walls, into a world still bristling with judgment? A kid ran past, chasing a balloon, and Julien caught it, handing it back with a nod. The mother thanked him, her accent thick, her smile warm. He felt the shift again. Not grand, not loud, but real. The Étoile was his to steward, and maybe, just maybe, he was worthy of it. The balloon floated high, a speck against the chandelier. The story wasn't over.